Hi, and welcome to Section 4, Publishing for Mobile. In the last section, we discussed steps for publishing your game on the web. In this section, we will discuss how to publish your game on a mobile device. In this section, we're going to take a look at making sure your game works at the multiple mobile resolutions, how to test your game on a mobile device, how to build your game for a mobile device, and how to distribute your mobile game. Now we move on to the first video of this section, that looks at methods for addressing the multiple resolutions and orientations of mobile devices. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the game needs to be updated to function properly on mobile, how to ensure the game displays correctly at multiple mobile resolutions, and how to set the screen orientation. The game we made in Section 2 wasn't really set up to work for mobile because it utilized right-clicking. I added a button to the scene and updated the Create field and TileStat scripts so that this button turns flagging on and off. I also added a little code to remove the pause button at Game Over. I suggest you check the updated scripts that came with this section. You'll also see the flag button and the updated scripts in the completed project provided with the course. Only a few lines of code are different from what we covered in Section 2, because right-clicking is the only thing that wouldn't really work with mobile, and the rest of your code will work just fine. Before we start going through the process of getting this game on a mobile device, I want to discuss resolution a bit more. I know I've mentioned it a few times already, but resolution is one of the biggest issues developers have when making games in Unity for mobile, because there are so many different mobile game resolutions. When developing for mobile, the two things you want to watch out for are that your UI scales appropriately, and your camera shows all the necessary elements in the scene if the camera's dimensions are changed. To ensure your UI scales appropriately, make sure your UI canvases have the correct canvas scaler properties. There are multiple ways to ensure your camera will always show everything it should in the scene. The method you use depends on exactly what you do and do not want visible, and where they are in relation to each other. But one way to ensure your camera will always show everything you want is to set your camera's scale based on the position of the items in the scene, like we did with this game. Remember, you can only set the camera's vertical scale, and the horizontal scale cannot be altered as it is determined by the resolution. So be careful that your camera won't show things that it's not supposed to if it stretches horizontally. I've seen games with background images that don't fill the screen, showing that ugly blue default camera background color in a strip along the edge of the game where the background image should be, because the developer forgot this step. This type of issue can be addressed by not just scaling the camera, but also the background. If you don't want to use code to scale the background, you can make the background image a little bit too big, so there's some portion of the background that always displays outside of the camera's bounds, thus never revealing its edges at any reasonable resolution. You can also put the background image on a UI canvas that automatically stretches to the camera and displays behind all items in the scene. Luckily, we have ensured our UI and camera scale for this game, so we don't need to do anything new to our game. I just wanted to remind you to always make sure your UI scales appropriately and your camera shows everything it should at multiple resolutions. It is not likely that you will have a device of every possible mobile resolution to test your game on, but you can easily view your game at different resolutions within your game view before you build it out. Once you switch your target platform to either iOS or Android, you'll see the resolution drop-down menu will provide a few common resolutions for that operating system. Let's switch our target platform to Android so we can see that in action. I can switch through the different resolutions while playing my game. If I had selected iOS as my target platform, common iOS resolutions would appear here. I don't need to check the ones that have a portrait resolution because I can force my game to only display in landscape mode. If you know of a resolution that you want to target, but it's not provided, you can always add it with the plus sign. After you've viewed the game at the various resolutions, you want to set the orientation in the player settings. Remember from the previous section, you can adjust the player settings for any platform even if it is not your current target platform. So we can check out the iOS settings even though we're currently targeting to Android. You probably won't have a game that will work at both landscape and portrait rotation, so don't forget this step. The camera will always stretch to fill the whole screen, so if you design a game in portrait mode with a perfectly fitted background image, but let the game rotate to landscape, expect the game to show a bunch of the blue default background color around the edges of your background image. The various rotations are defined in Unity based on the images I have here. One annoying thing about orientation is that landscape rotations are opposite of those defined in Apple's Xcode than what they are here. So if you select a single default landscape orientation for your game, unless you change the settings of your iOS build, Your game will display at one rotation for iOS and one for Android. I like to set my landscape games to auto rotation and just allow for both landscape rotations so that it doesn't really matter. That way, my game will rotate to whatever rotation the player has their phone angled at. I, as a player, also prefer to be able to rotate my phone to whichever landscape orientation I want. If you set to auto rotation, make sure to disable the portrait orientations. You'll notice when you change these settings on the Android build, they update to the same settings on the iOS build. Hiding or not hiding the status bar is up to you. We have everything resizing appropriately, so including it won't hurt our game's view. I like to leave it visible so players can see their batteries charge. I know I personally like to be able to see my battery charge when playing a game on my phone, since most games eat up my phone's battery. Now that we have checked that everything looks good at different resolutions and set our orientation, we're ready to test on an actual device, which we'll cover in the next video. In this video, we discussed ensuring our game works at multiple resolutions and setting our game's orientation.